Okay, Yatu, so today I've got for you a lovely story on Henri Matisse. I'm introducing you to this artist because later in the week we're going to be doing some Matisse style cutouts, some Matisse style art. But first, I'd like to just introduce you to this book that teaches you a little bit about him. So, it's called The Swimmers, Paper Cutouts with Matisse. And it's written by a lady called Miss Bianchi. I have a funny feeling she might be a teacher. Henri Matisse was a brilliant artist. He made paintings and sculptures. He made prints and drew all the time, and he loved colours, especially brilliant colours. He painted all the colourful things around him. He painted his goldfish in bright red. He painted the bright ultramarine of the Mediterranean Sea as it looked from his window. He painted an elegant lady with a bright green stripe across her colourful face. His paintings were so full of colour that everyone was amazed. Some were even shocked. Never had such wild colours and fierce brushstroke been seen in France. "He paints like a fauve," said the shocked art critics, who usually dressed only in black and white. Now a fauve, here it says, is a wild beast. Wow, a pigeon just landed near my window. Sorry, I got completely distracted. Right. A fauve is a wild beast in French. A fauve is a wild beast, it says here. Fauvist, an artist painting in the style of the wild beast. And these are 3 of his beautiful pictures. After many years of making the most colourful paintings, he stopped. Old and sick, his country at war, he had to remain in bed and did not feel strong enough to paint any more. Sad and weak, he stared at the empty walls of his room. A little stain on the wall bothered him a lot. He grabbed his scissors and some white paper, cut out a little bird, and covered the scuff. It made him think of a trip he had taken long ago. He cut more shapes of things he remembered from that trip. Sea waves, seaweed, tropical plants, swooping birds, and the swimming sharks. He covered the whole wall with them. From his bed, he thought about this new way of making art. "I will now paint with my scissors," he declared. He asked his helpers to gather the materials he needed: thick paper, colourful paints, large brushes, and glue. Matisse commanded them to paint large sheets of paper in all his favourite colours: azure blue, bright red, mandarin orange, leaf green, electric yellow. The whirlwind of his scissors gradually transformed his home. All kinds of bold, colourful shapes emerged from the cut-out coloured paper and found a place on his walls. His mind and spirit awoke, as fierce with colour as ever. Sometimes Matisse would cut out a curious abstract shape, called the positive shape, and then compare it with the piece of paper he'd cut it from, the negative shape. He would look at both of them and choose his favourite one to use and save the other for later. That's an example there. That's the positive, that's what he cut out, and that's the negative. What's left over? He would look at both of them and choose his favourite one to use and save the other for later. Or he would simply use both and glue them side by side in collages that eventually covered another whole wall. "I'll make a paper garden of colour," he said with delight, cutting shapes as bright and vivid as the paintings he had always made. When the art critics learned about Matisse's new art, they said, "It's just a bunch of paper jokes from the old man." But these walls of paper cutouts, so colourful, were no joke at all. Amongst leaves and plants, he wanted to add acrobats and dancers in contorted poses and in agile movement. Using his drawings as inspiration, he experimented with recreating them in paper cutouts. He cut big pieces of cobalt paper to create the limbs, bodies, and heads for each of these blue acrobats. Wanting to make more blue figures, he asked his assistant to take him to see the bathers at the pool by the sea promenade. It was very sunny, and the heat made him uncomfortable. He asked to return home, but the swimmers had inspired him. "I will make my own swimming pool full of bathers right here," he said. He began cutting out large blue shapes, combining them to form splashes and swimming figures before he decided what he liked best. His helpers pinned the pieces to the wall until he was happy with how they looked, then glued all the pieces in place. Soon enough, he had his own paper cutout swimming pool full of bathers, surrounding him in his dining room. It was a refreshing place for him to be, away from the hot sun. He enjoyed the company of these paper swimmers at his home every day until the end of his life. The paper cutout art projects. Please do try this at home. To make paper cutouts following Matisse's technique, it is important to find a grown-up who can help you with some of the steps. You will need these materials: watercolour paper or other thick paper that won't wrinkle with paint, but that you can cut easily with scissors, poster paint, opaque tempera or house paint, or I'm actually using acrylic. Any kind of non-toxic paint will work as long as it's not translucent or transparent. Large flat brushes, the more the better, so that you don't need to clean them each time you use a different colour, although I only used one. Scissors to cut out your paper shapes. Glue. Matisse used a glue made of potato and almonds, but you can use glue sticks. Foam, core board and pins to practice your composition with the help of your grown-up. You will also need thick paper or cardboard to glue the final cut-out collage onto. Step 1. Start by colouring the paper. Lots of it. If you want to jump into making paper cutouts without making your own coloured paper, you can also simply use bright coloured paper found in craft shops, or you can also buy it on Amazon. The brighter the colours, the better. Using a thick flat brush, paint each sheet completely, side to side, with a beautiful bright colour. To avoid a big mess, cover your work surface with craft paper or newspapers. Paint lots of sheets so that you have many colours to choose from to make combinations. The way you'll combine the colours is called your colour palette. So here I am. This is me starting to paint my sheets of paper. Now, I really just looked around to see what I had in my old paint box, and I found out I had cobalt blue, which is what I'm currently painting onto that white sheet. It's a really strong, bright colour and it looks beautiful. Now I was careful to go all the way to the edges so that my whole sheet is covered in blue paint. The more the merrier. Then I moved on and got my second sheet of paper, and I chose to paint that in a colour called yellow ochre. It's basically a shade of yellow, slightly darker than your normal bright yellow, maybe a bit more natural. It reminded me of someone's blonde hair, like Goldilocks. Now, before I went ahead and painted this, I cleaned my brush, got myself some fresh water so that the colours wouldn't mix. And then once again, I started to spread the paint across the page. It's really satisfying. It feels all soft and nice to spread across. I used roundish brush strokes sometimes just because it's nicer when you don't see the strokes of the paint, and if you go round and round in circles, you see the strokes of the paint less. Once I'd finished with my yellow ochre, I took another colour called Vermilion Red. Really strong red, it's beautiful. And once again I clean my paintbrush, because I only have one, large flat one. And once I'd done that, I started painting again. Now this one was beautiful, it reminded me of roses. The kind of ones that you see around at the moment in people's front gardens. Then I chose a colour called Magenta, which is a shade of pink. Quite a really nice bright pink. It really pops. And I cleaned my brush again to make sure that I wasn't mixing it with the red, otherwise it would change the colour. The next colour I chose was called Burnt Sienna. Now, I think that's a bit of a fancy name for a shade of brown, a really nice shade of brown. It looks like tree bark. And I did the same thing. I spread it across my page until it was all painted from corner to corner, edge to edge, in burnt sienna. Now, I thought this was going to be my last colour, but then I took a look at my pieces of paper and thought, I'm missing a green. And since I didn't have a ready-made green in a tube, I thought I'd have a go at making one. Can you guess what two colours I blended together to make my green? Now, this is me mixing my two colours to make a green. There I go with the yellow. And as you might have guessed, the other colour that I'm going to put in is blue. Because we know that the mixing of blue and yellow, the primary colours, makes green. Now, because they're slightly different primary colours, like the yellow is yellow ochre, so it's not your usual yellow. The green that came out was slightly different. It was a bit more foresty, a bit more of a natural kind of tree green. And I was really happy with it in the end. So I painted my whole sheet in this foresty green colour. There I'm actually still playing with a few different shades. Maybe adding a bit more yellow, adding a bit more blue to see what the different quantities of colour create, what kind of different green they make. But then in the end I chose to go with the one I first made, which was the forest green. And finally, these are the colours I ended up with in the end. You can see there that I'm comparing them to Matisse's colours in the book. But I'm quite happy with them. I've got a green, a red, a brown, a pink, and a blue, and something to mimic a yellow. So let's move on to the next task of cutting our shapes. Okay, hi everyone, we're here for part 2 of our Matisse Cut Out Art Challenge. So I'm going to look in the book and I'm going to get some inspiration of what kind of shapes to create. So I see a lot of hearts, a lot of stars, some squares, some rectangular shapes, and more abstract shapes that I wouldn't even know how to describe. I see apples, fish, and then Matisse likes a lot to do kind of squiggly looking seaweed, kind of like plants that you would find in the sea. So I'm gonna have my own go at doing things like that, and then around me I've got some inspiration of my own, so I thought, why not look at my environment so I can make cutouts of my own as well without only looking at the book. So I got myself a cactus, I got one of my favorite plants, which actually kind of looks like one of Matisse's squiggly seaweed plants, but it's a bit different, so I thought I could start cutting shapes like that. And then I got my ukulele, because I thought it might be quite easy to cut a ukulele shape and it would turn out pretty. So we'll try. We will see as we go along. So I have my colored sheets of paper. I'm gonna start off with this pink, and I have my scissor. Now remember, when you're using scissors at home, make sure that you've got your parents to help you, or that they're children's scissors. I wouldn't want you to cut yourselves, so be careful and be mindful. So I think to start with, I'm gonna use one of Matisse's shapes, and I think I'm gonna give a go to the apple. I'm gonna cut an apple. So, I'm starting quite close to the edge because I want to make the most out of what I've got. I only have one sheet of each color, remember, so. It means trying to use that sheet as mindfully as possible. Cute. Oh, and look at that, we have the negative, which is cool. So what I could even do is cut out around the edge in a square the negative of my apple, and I could add that to my collage at the end. Nice. I think now I'm going to try a fish. All right, that's my first fish. Then I think I'm going to try a star, but I'm going to change color and use this mustardy kind of golden yellow. And I'm going to do like this, because the star is basically made up of lots of triangle shapes put together. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's abstract, remember? So it's more about what you personally think looks pretty, looks beautiful, and says what you want it to say. So there we go. That's my kind of half star. And I think I might put that just there next to my apple. Here again, I can cut out the negative, or I could make, this is amazing, because once you've cut bits out, you start to see other things in the imprint you've left, in the negative you've left. So I've just looked at this, what I had left over from my star, and I saw a pomegranate. Look at that. Pomegranate. So it's really cool. You get really creative. Right, now I'm going to move on to blue, I think. And I'm going to try cutting out the shape of the ukulele. So I'm starting from down here, the belly. It's pretty much shaped like a guitar, just a tiny one. And all the way up, go slightly broader at the top. And then come back down and do that sort of S shape again around the belly. Let's give that a go. There we go, there's my ukulele. I like that. And then I'm gonna do a star, but a different kind of star. I'm gonna do a star using rectangles. So I'm just gonna cut out a few around here. A few rectangle shapes. There's one. I'm trying to be mindful to cut them all the same size. Really nice. Okay. Then I'm going to look back at Matisse's book. And I really like the way he's made 4-leaf clovers by using 1, 2, 3, 4 hearts. I also really like the moon, so I'm going to give those two a go. I'm going to make a 4-leaf clover in that deep brownish color. So I need 4 hearts. Now the trick is to go really, really slowly. Don't rush it. The slower you go, the nicer the shape at the end. If you rush it, you might just end up with something that you didn't intend to do. So go really slow. Now I still haven't used my green, so I'm gonna use some green, and with the green, I might give a go at doing one of these leaves. So lots of leaves attached to one central point. We call these the segments on the leaves. And then there's one top segment that points straight up. I'm happy with how my piece looks. It's got a lot of detail on it. There's loads of color. So I'm going to mix PVA glue not much of it, just a little bit. With a dash of water. Again, not much, just a little. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush, but I suggest if you have a glue brush, it's better because it may ruin your paintbrush if you don't clean it off quickly. And I'm going to mix the two just so the glue is a little less thick and easier to apply to the smaller bits of paper. All right. And then we go. As you can see, I've moved it around various times before deciding what my final piece was going to look like. Who knows, I might still change it, but for now, let's go with this. This is the finished piece and what I ended up with in the end. I think it looks great and I'm really proud of it, and I hope you enjoyed making Matisse cutouts with me. See you next time, guys, for some more super fun art challenges. Don't forget to share your pictures, as I would love to see how it turned out for you.